Oscar Piastri, the future of McLaren, suddenly struggling when it matters most. Engineers uncover a hidden pattern in his driving data that explains everything. It's not lack of speed, it's precision so fine that it's holding him back. What he fixes next could decide not just races, but championships. From the pit wall, McLaren's engineers watched silently. "He's good," one said. "Too good," another replied. The timing screens told a strange story. Piastri was fast, but not fast enough. He wasn't sliding, he wasn't fighting the car. He was guiding it, and the numbers didn't lie. Every input was smoother than Norris's, but every lap was 2 to 3 tenths slower. "He's losing time before the apex," his engineer muttered, staring at the telemetry. "He's driving like it's a simulator, not a street fight." On board, the cockpit was quiet, no erratic steering twitches, no late corrections. Just calm breathing and steady hands. "Turn 4, Oscar, brake bias forward 2 clicks," came the radio call. "Copy," he said, voice calm, surgical. He braked early, trail braked with surgical precision, and hit the corner clean. But on exit, the car looked restrained. Norris, by contrast, was wild, sliding the rear, biting at the throttle, forcing the front tires to rotate. On the monitors, the difference was glaring. "He's missing heat on the fronts," said the tire engineer. "He's too gentle on entry." Lap after lap, the same pattern repeated. The telemetry lines were perfect, perhaps too perfect. Every trace, every input curve looked like a textbook example of driving technique. But Formula One isn't won by textbooks, it's won by chaos. The engineers noticed it first on the brake pressure overlay. "Look," one said, zooming in. "His release is too smooth. He's never shocking the car into rotation. He's losing initial bite." The numbers told the story in cold precision. Piastri's talent wasn't failing, it was overperforming. His perfection was his limitation. As the laps continued, the frustration began to show, not in mistakes, but in microseconds. "He's plateauing," Stella murmured from the pit wall. "He's reached the edge of control, but he's not stepping over it." That's what separated Norris from Piastri, that weekend aggression disguised as confidence. Norris threw the car. Piastri guided it. And on this track, in this heat, the car didn't want to be guided. It wanted to be manhandled. "He's driving for efficiency," Stella said quietly. But the MCL39 rewards violence. The McLaren Technology Center was unusually quiet that Monday morning. No chatter from the mechanics, no laughter echoing across the simulator bays, just the soft hum of computers and the muted tension that comes after a confusing weekend. Oscar Piastri walked through the glass corridors with his usual calm composure, the kind that makes people forget how young he really is. At 24, he carried himself like a veteran, analytical, unemotional, always focused on data first, emotion second. But today, the data didn't make sense. Andrea Stella stood at the front of the performance room, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the glowing telemetry screens. "We've got something interesting," he said finally. "Oscar, this is your braking phase versus Lando's." On the display, 2 colored traces appeared, Piastri in orange, Norris in blue. The difference was subtle but undeniable. "You're too smooth," Stella said. "Your inputs are textbook, but the car doesn't want textbook. It wants attitude." Oscar frowned. "So I'm too consistent?" Stella nodded. "You're losing 3 tenths before the apex because you never force the rotation." For a moment, nobody spoke. The engineers exchanged glances. It was a strange diagnosis, a driver being too perfect. But in modern Formula One, where the cars are balanced on a knife's edge, perfection can dull the blade. The MCL39 was a machine built on instability, high rake, aggressive front-end load, and an aerodynamic balance that demanded drivers to provoke it to life. Norris did that naturally, using the throttle like a sculptor's chisel. Piastri, on the other hand, treated the car like a Stradivarius, elegant, careful, precise. The result? Beauty without fire. The telemetry told the story in brutal honesty. Here, Stella pointed to turn 7. "Your throttle modulation is flawless, linear, smooth. But Lando's isn't." He spikes it, kills the rear grip, then lets the front bite. He's faster because he's disturbing the car. Oscar studied the graphs, eyes narrowing. So I'm overmanaging it. Stella smiled slightly. You're driving it like it's yours. The problem is, this car only behaves if you fight it. The room fell quiet again. The engineers had worked with hundreds of drivers, but few listened as carefully as Piastri did in that moment. He wasn't defensive. He was absorbing. Later, in the simulator, the pattern became clear. Lap after lap, Oscar pushed the McLaren to its limits, but every input, every brake release, every throttle transition was too tidy. The car responded well, but not fast. You're keeping it within the window, his engineer said through the intercom, but the window's moving faster than you are. Oscar gripped the wheel tighter. He understood now. It wasn't that he lacked aggression, it was that his mind was wired for control. So I need to let go, he murmured under his breath. The reply came instantly. Exactly. Let go, and let the car do the ugly work. When the session ended, he pulled off his gloves and sat in silence, eyes fixed on the steering wheel. He'd spent his entire life being rewarded for precision, for not making mistakes, for being the driver who could bring a car home without drama. That was what won him Formula 2. That was what made him McLaren's quiet weapon. And now, suddenly, that same strength was the very thing holding him back. He looked up at Stella, who was standing by the monitor. It's funny, Oscar said with a small smile. You spend years learning control, then one day, someone tells you to throw it away. Stella nodded slowly. That's Formula 1, he said. The rules of greatness change every year. The McLaren simulator room at Woking was cold and dimly lit, the kind of environment that demands focus. Every hum of electronics, every flicker of light felt deliberate. This was where the world's best drivers came to dissect themselves, to turn instinct into numbers, and numbers back into instinct. For Oscar Piastri, it wasn't punishment. It was a puzzle. He didn't see his problem as weakness. He saw it as an equation to solve. And that's what made him different. The engineers had already prepared the session data overlays, braking comparisons, even live feedback simulations against Lando Norris's driving inputs. We're going to exaggerate the instability, said Tom Stanton, Piastri's performance engineer. Less rear damping, more front rebound. It'll feel wrong. That's the point. Piastri just nodded, slipping on his gloves. Let's make it uncomfortable. He climbed into the simulator, visor down, body still, mind completely alert. The screen flickered Mexico City, turn 4. The same corner that had exposed the issue in the first place. The first few laps were chaos. The car snapped sideways under braking. The rear tires screamed. The steering wheel writhed in his hands. But instead of complaining, Piastri adapted quietly, methodically. His inputs changed, millimeter by millimeter. He braked later, with more aggression. He rotated the car faster, trusting the rear to slide before catching it. Every lap, the telemetry improved. You're finding the rotation point earlier now, Stanton said through the headset. That's 3/10 right there. Oscar smiled faintly. So that's what ugly looks like, he replied. For the next hour, the session became a kind of symphony, a dance between control and chaos. Watch this trace, said the engineer, showing 2 overlapping lines. Yours is still too smooth. Norris's looks like noise spikes everywhere. But that noise is grip recovery. Oscar leaned closer, studying the data like a scientist reading a heartbeat. So he's creating grip, not waiting for it. Exactly, Stanton said. You've been managing it, not provoking it. The realization clicked instantly. Then let's provoke it. He adjusted the brake bias, shifted his timing, and went again. This time, the difference was immediate. The car came alive, twitchy, unpredictable, but somehow faster. You're half a second up, Stanton said. That's the most aggressive lap you've done in the MCL 39. Oscar's breathing stayed steady. Feels like driving a fight, he said. Good, Stanton replied. You're finally giving the car something to react to." The young Australian didn't celebrate. He just nodded, already thinking about how to replicate it in real life. That's what made him dangerous, the way he turned discomfort into data, data into understanding, and understanding into habit. After the session, the engineering team gathered around the central console. "We can help him with tools," said one data analyst, "but what he's doing now, that's instinct development. You can't code that." Stella, watching from the back of the room, smiled slightly. "He's teaching himself how to be imperfect," he said. "That's something no simulator can replicate." And in that moment, everyone realized that Piastri's learning curve wasn't linear, it was exponential. He wasn't just fast. He was evolving. By the end of the day, the telemetry told a new story. His braking phase was shorter, sharper. His steering corrections were quicker, more aggressive. The car's balance, once cold and compliant, now moved with life. "He's doing what Lando does," one engineer noted. "No," Stella corrected. "He's doing what Oscar does, but now, with attitude." The difference was subtle but profound. Piastri hadn't copied anyone. He had absorbed, adapted, and redefined. Before leaving, he stood by the simulator door, glancing back at the glowing screens. "Every car's got a personality," he said quietly. "You can't force it to be something it's not, but you can learn how it wants to be driven." Stanton smiled. "And this one?" Piastri looked at him. "It wants to be fought."